If there is enough fuel for our plane, Geshe-la and myself will be going to the Netherlands in about 2 weeks. So that means that there's going to be 2 more Sundays before we go. And also that last Saturday before we go, which is the last Saturday of this month of April, there's going to be the Vajrabhairava commentary with Vajrayogini completion stage. So that is kind of what's happening. We're going to be gone for 2 weeks. One of those weeks will be a week off. The other week, we're going to have Dr. Sean Hillman talk about his work in medical ethics as it's informed by his Buddhist practice. So it will be something interesting to look forward to there. And then as we go into May, we have a really rich program. So we'll start the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. I imagine as a side text, we'll continue with this song of recognizing the mother because we're only about a third of the way through it. And then on the second Saturday of June, there's going to be the White Haruka Longevity Initiation. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to email me. We will be making it available online, but you have to participate in real time. It won't be available to watch later. So you have to sign into Zoom and participate in real time. So I think that is all I wanted to mention. We are planning kind of like a 2-day Mahamudra intensive at some point in the summer, but that's kind of in early planning stages. So once we know that, we'll share more with you. If you want to keep ahead of all of the programs that are happening, please register for our newsletter, and you can also check things out on the website. And I see we're at 10 o'clock, so I'll stop nattering and we'll invite Geshe-la down and get started. Grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee, get comfortable. I'll just, once Geshe-la sees it, I'll take a moment to close the blind a little bit. The sun is out suddenly. So thank you, everybody. I won't bloviate further. Just can everybody hear me? We'll do a sound check on here. Is that good? Okay, yente tsunda.
Yeah, congratulations.
And you can hear Geshe-la's voice okay? Wonderful. So let's get started. Oh, jisungi.
Oya ta kanga chiru kanga tashi dele tani kanga lojo re nyole re tani shawa yoga kanga ta pasuba loji rewa yos.
So greetings, Tashidele, to all Dharma friends. So whether we speak about your study, whether we speak about your practice, or any of your positive activities, Geshe-la hopes that it is all going well.
Ota ngaroso ane ta na ndrichine lekache ate so ta se cha chemoti ya jintu ya. Ane leva cha chemoti me leva cha chemoti ta.
So in terms of our task here, of course, it is to take this human brain and improve on it, to take this human intelligence and maximize, train it, and improve on it. This is essentially our task. So then, in particular, when we speak about the study and the practice, if we speak about actually more specifically focused upon the study, we want to be able to abandon some of the faults that might be obstacles for that study. And so here we have the talk of the three pots, right? The upside down pot, the contaminated pot, and the leaky pot. So we want to abandon the faults of the three pots. So what happens if we don't recognize what these faults are and we don't take measures to purify the three faults of the pot is that then our study in terms of an accumulation of merit, it will be generated. In terms of accumulation of knowledge, it will be hindered. And also in terms of it being effective in improving our mind, it will be an obstacle to that as well. Oh, right. So Geshe said he's told you the story of, and if anybody knows like what animal this actually is, I think it's some sort of marmot or some sort of weasel, but it's a creature that lives in a burrow in Tibet, and it grabs a mouse, hits it on its head, and then puts it under its backside to save for later. But the problem is, of course, each time it sees a new mouse, it lifts up its backside, and the original one runs away. So don't be like that with your Dharma study. So this is an example that's used very frequently, very a popular example, right, for all of those who are engaged in studies. Yeah. So this weasel or this marmot creature, that's the analogy that's most similar to is the upside down ikung yopagi. It's like the leaky pot with the holes in it. And another thing as we study and as we practice is the fault of the contaminated pot. And this one is particularly pernicious. So, not just listening to the explanation, but perhaps being biased about the speaker or having some sort of less than wholesome motivation. These are all things that could contaminate our pot. So in the teaching on the four reliances, remember that the Buddha instructs us to rely upon the teaching, not upon the teacher. So this is one of the instructions. And then in terms of the Dharma itself, ultimately what we want to rely upon is the definitive meaning, not the interpretable meaning. So the definitive meaning is really important. And the other one is do not rely upon the sense consciousnesses, rely upon the mental consciousness, right? The sense consciousnesses can get stimulated for any type of reason, but when listening to the Dharma, one should be primarily concerned with the mental consciousness.
이시우 고 제체 몸보 따닐다 제체 인에 도소나 다 자대 체만라고 다 드리 가세 요메 드니 따닐 다 띵건로 가르마도 이시라요 다 노아 뭐요 알아왔어
Ale, 이체스나 제바
이시
Yeah, did it?
무시도 이시
Yeah.
이시라요 노아 뭐요 알아 그래서
right.
마노아진로 가르왔어
And even if we rely primarily upon the mental consciousness, it's really important when we listen to the teachings to develop our understanding of what has a valid reasoning, and then if it has a valid reasoning going forward, right? Because our mental engagements, even within our mental consciousness, can sometimes be mistaken. So that's important as well.
우시를 야가요 요아래 거두면 우시가 이나 덴바트바면 저토게요 말했어
Yeah.
아니 내면 또 토게요 말했어 센제니까라 우시라
Yeah. Tambodi deme sana.
덴바트바 로지지트바 저토게 말했어 우시가
Yeah.
요 나졸로조 가제잖아 우시가 또 많이 또 토게 말했어 센제까라
So when we speak about the various sense consciousnesses and compare them to the mental consciousness, this is interesting because, of course, the mental consciousness, they don't impute the sense consciousnesses, they don't impute true existence or inherent existence upon the phenomena which are appearing to them. However, right, so we might think that's positive. However, on the same hand, right, we can't come to an understanding of how phenomena lack inherent existence through the sense consciousnesses. This can only come through cultivating it within the mental consciousness.
우시가 또 많이 또 토야요 말했어 다 손지소나 말이 봐요조 바자도 지바 좀어서 자이자 우시나요 또 그래 다 차소 지바랬어
So we understand that in terms of the bodhisattvas, right? Even the Arya bodhisattvas, that they're so Geshe-la's not on a page. He's just riffing it. I was asking what page we're on. This is not on a page. I'll let you know when we start the book. So then, in terms of the Arya bodhisattvas, also they cannot, through their sense consciousness, cognize emptiness. Only through the mental consciousness. A Buddha, because a Buddha has completely cleared away all the obscurations along with their imprints, a Buddha can completely cognize emptiness within a Buddha's holy sense consciousnesses as well as mental consciousness.
어떤 적은데 와서 어디다 못 왔는 적은데 다 된다 되는 내 보게 내 지시에서 밥 가야 되라 아니 티소 고스 되냐로 보게 템보지도 야보지요 봐이나 어디다 뒤다 또 가도요
So then in terms of these three faults of the pot, right, the upside down, the contaminated, and the leaky pot, if we ask what are the antidotes to those, the antidotes to those are the trainings in hearing, contemplation, and meditation.
어디다 티소 고스 돈보티가 내샤다와 아니 바티가 내 말에 내 카비오 바도 보티가
Tambodi ne kabupa, right?
아니 바티가 내샤다와 서바티 내 저마지다 다 좀마
And if you want to kind of join these specifically, we could say that hearing is the training that is mostly related as an antidote to the upside down pot, that contemplation is related to mostly the fault of the leaky pot or the pot with holes in, and meditation is the antidote to the contaminated pot.
그래서 어디다 들거든요. 어디다 뒤놓니다. 로종용 같이 뭐를 다 쓸까? 그래 야마타와 다 같이 못 찾아야.
So these are all important for our study, and actually hearing, contemplation, meditation, we want to sort of apply them together in unison as we study.
어디다 들거든요. 다 뒤놓네 다 같이 해줘 놓네 다 해줘 된 저왕인에 또 그때 다 고대.
So then in terms of what is really going to bring the teachings into the mind and facilitate transformation, that transformation of the mind, out of the three, this is really meditation. And meditation here can be both analytical and placement meditation. And also related to all of our other activities, right, in life and improving those, the practice of meditation is also very important on that level.
슈켈 맞지가 컨트롤하고 치고 저로 대바이나 로소나 근데 다티 컨트롤 슈 트러블 레차와 이자셀라 근데 니만 인제 티테즈 마데와서 요레스.
So we know, right, that for example, if somebody wakes up with an angry mind, if they went to bed with an angry mind especially, but if they wake up with an angry mind, that mind becomes hardened. And if you wake up angry, right, your chances of remaining sort of stressed or dissatisfied for the remainder of that day are quite high.
다 슈켈 게이센다고 질때 다 가서 터터터가서 고나 고온다고 진짜 더바이나 다 디가 오프게 니반다고 치전우지 니마텔 가로 베도 요레스.
However, if when we wake up we're able to do just a very brief meditation and place a virtuous object within the mind, right? This can be like a current of positivity, which is going to keep our mind in a happy direction, our day in a virtuous direction.
다 대페지 야 같이 뭐 지러 왔어. 다 대정도 맞아서 로소소가 다 니마티가 레가 이나레 가레인 테마도 강가라다.
And as well, you know, when we look at the various tasks or that we have to do at work and so forth throughout the day, it will all benefit from that cultivation of mindfulness that we had in our meditation at the day's beginning. And it will also mean that there are fewer mistakes and so forth in the tasks that we engage in.
다 같이 뭐지를 다 알아서 리도 세 템보 다 대워지 그거야 이다 유아지 거기 레렌도야 샤완도야 리세 샤와 다들 같이 뭐지레스.
And because we want a body and mind that are peaceful and relaxed, then also it's really important to have the elements, the four elements within the body in balance, and in this way the body and the mind can remain calm.
그게 어야 단 유아지 때 당한저 신라용 같이 뭐 가세레는 간저 동근디 왔어 다 논라용 된 노지 유아지 할레비 같이 뭐 쩌디가레스.
So we know the four elements, earth, water, and so forth, especially when we look at the external environment, they're easy to identify. But it is also said that these elements are something that is present within us.
어떤 유아지 때랑 얘네지는 라바 차와 신드 차와 다 디사보게 좀 뭐요 알아스.
And when we speak about the elemental aspects of the body, for example, we can speak of the coarse, subtle, and extremely subtle aspects.
어떤 유아지 라바 차와 때 도이 갈이나 이제 뭐 자토고 요래라 아니 다 세리고 가로 자토고 요래스.
So in terms of the coarse and the subtle manifestation of the elements, this is something that is explained fully in the sutra teachings of the Buddha, and it is also something that is touched upon in a lot of modern science.
어떤 유아지 차와서 레서는 단 도이 갈게 제시라요 말래라 다
신주 차와레베.
다 신드 차와.
Yeah.
어다 세리고 단데 제시자
When we come, however, to the extremely subtle manifestation of these elements, we'll see that both the sutra teachings and science are not explaining much about that at all.
단 유아지 신드 차이가 단내서 지워대 다 좋은거는 눈에 단대시 얘네서 레디요래 거는 내서 뭐 용거래.
So the extremely subtle expression of these elements is explained in the most vast way in the Vajrayana or the Tantra teachings. That's where you're going to find an extensive explanation of that.
다 야천부지 당연에서는 다 때문으지랜디 왔어. 빼는 간조 배나 라마 자침부 던지 다 보게 두도 되는 녀마 저정하냐 시대 기들이 용거도 왔어. 다 던지 대비가라 단 용하지 참어대 라가지 요레스.
So, for example, though there are things that are sort of observable, right? You'll have, for example, a lama who is in post-death meditation, which we call tukdam, and with when it's observed correctly, it can happen for 10, 15, or 20 days. Now, the person is functionally dead, but there's no decomposition and so forth. Why is this the case? This is connected to the subtle elements, which are still active within the body.
어다 파타는 무슨 뭐지 돼요. 바데 당한서 관계 통계 하러와 세리비우 통계 간조 통계 이나요. 디니까 그 용하지 때 단데 쓰고 자토요 말이야.
So, you see, right, like that the person is dead, right? That the meditator is dead. Scientists can also confirm that they are, dead by the measure of science. Yet what's happening here with the lack of decomposition and so forth has to do with this subtle expression of the four elements and consciousness. And this is something that science cannot explain completely. But in the teachings of secret mantra or tantra in the Vajrayana, there are complete explanations for this phenomena and others. Yeah. Right. And so in terms of the time that the subtle elements are active and so forth, this is something that is different depending upon the case. There's sort of, I guess, more advanced levels of this and also increasingly subtle levels of this. All right. And so at the moment that the extremely subtle aspect of the elements are present, there are also four minds or consciousnesses that match those extremely subtle elements in number. So as we go into meditation, as we bring the four elements into balance, right? Even on the coarser levels, this is something that can help to establish a peaceful body and mind. And so this is the reason that it is useful. And it creates the basis, right, for what is really the essence of the practice, right, which is the development of the positive mental qualities through the practices of method and wisdom. And when we speak about Buddhahood and this requiring the direct realization of emptiness and so forth, that direct realization of emptiness is very advanced, right? This might be something that's quite far in the future. So what we want to do is, even if we can't have the direct realization, we at least want to be able to have a conceptual understanding of things like bodhicitta, love, compassion, and emptiness. And that is where we place our hopes. So any object of focus or topic that you're meditating upon, right? It's really important that you have this awareness that this is connected with the practices of method, or that this is connected with the practices of wisdom. And when we are able to meditate upon that those objects with a mind that is sort of clear, with a mind that is steady and peaceful, that's really going to be beneficial for that as well. Okay, now we can go. So be just like a small child who walks into a beautiful temple and just opens its eyes in wonderment. Just have an open-mindedness, an open-minded observation of everything that is happening with the body and the mind. Just observe. So we just place a mind of observation, recognizing what is arising. Is the mental state neutral? Is it positive? Is it negative? Are the various thoughts or appearances arising wholesome or unwholesome. Just note that.
모두 코로 가르세 가르시와이나이 코로 미 가른도 델레비갈 소와 가르레도 다 때문 다와노지.
So any sort of discursive or projecting thoughts that are arising, with this attitude of curious observation, think, that particular mental projection, what object of focus is it connected to, or what feeling is it connected to?
동볼레비갈 너네 때에서 쉬치문다고 요바이나요. 그런 걸 따니 대바이나. 아니 제이보와 노지고 제가 놀바이로 아마도 그 안에 레카치 도움이 됐어.
So those mental projections, those appearances, when they first arise, they might seem something solid and strong. But when we try to pinpoint their essence, when we try to investigate their nature, we see that they are ephemeral, just like bubbles on water.
르메베 Gyatso chemonoji nyamanda mandagone pasinro de yarte se koro Gyatso chemonanda never meba lele de to.
So just like on a windless day, the ocean can remain completely calm. Even if there are minnows swimming beneath the surface, they don't disturb it. In the same way, when the wind of our thoughts stops blowing, our mind can be calm and things can arise but not disturb it.
Se shawa tela tene ane leo ane shawa to dewa ta lele yo somebody.
From bringing forth this peaceful mind, then our body becomes peaceful and at ease as well.
Luma te se ri kabo kachung tsumanoji komo kabo tsumanoji ta page ta tsishi garjaba ina ri kabo chini tsumatelen dograwas tenuji yo somebody.
So as we tap into this fundamental nature of our mind, we see that it is equanimous, that it is neutral. In fact, it is like beautiful white snow or a perfectly clean white cloth that we can dye any color that we wish.
Je kangal page karse ane gabo che ya tsijin dawo ota je kangal page deshin ju ya se ya bo ji ngol ya jogi so much.
So think, I'm going to dye this beautiful white cloth of the fundamental mind a beneficial color that will bring happiness not only to myself but also to others, that will provide a sense of peace to myself and others.
Rungje yo meba senje yo meba noso zubade dewato samyaga dewato dejeto demba nikato tadu dewato dejeto demba dena jumar demba ngaro rungi shegi sombi
Think both myself and others, without bias, how wonderful it would be if we could have happiness and the causes of happiness, not just temporary happiness, but ultimate uncontaminated happiness. May we all have uncontaminated happiness. I myself alone will establish all beings in uncontaminated happiness. Bring forth that mind of love.
Tendri soma no jijo toke de sunji ma to me ai sa ta di tendri ki di che de ro de to ki che de nga se de de ta ha temba no ji ji de ma no ji ta sunji cha to ba so yi so bi to chon ju se.
So think in terms of actualizing that. At the moment, I am limited. Only a fully enlightened Buddha can realistically place all of those beings in happiness. Therefore, may I achieve the same Buddhahood as our teacher Shakyamuni did, as Venerable Tara and the other enlightened beings did, for the sake of all sentient beings. Meditate on bodhicitta.
Soma no ji wa ji ta so se chi de da ge yo sha yi de da le tene den shin ji la ro chi.
I will pray that this can happen exactly as I wish, with the help of the blessings of the holy beings. Therefore, I will visualize the field of refuge and make single-pointed requests with faith.
Yeah,
so Geshe said he realizes this was a longer meditation, so we'll just have that one sort of meditation as the main one today, like often we do too, but it'll just be that one today. So, praise to the Buddha. Tenpa chom den de de jin she ba ja chom ba yon da ba zo pe song ge re ba dang shab su den ba de wa she ba ji den gen ba che bu de we ka ro jor wa la na me ba la da mi nang gi ten ba song ge chon de pe jawa shakya tu ba la cha se lo che de gyab su chi ho ten ba chon den de jin she ba da chon ba yang da ba zo be song je she ba dang shao su den ba de wa she ba ji den chen ba che bu de we ka lo jo wa la na me ba la do mi nong gi ten ba song ge chom den de pe ja wa sha ja tu ba la cha se lo che de gyao su ji ho ten ba chom den de jin she ba da chom ba yang da ba zo be song je re ba dang shao su den ba de wa she ba ji den chen ba che bu de we ka lo jo wa la na me ba la do mi nong gi ten ba song ge chom den de pe ja wa sha ja tu ba la cha se lo che de gyab su chi ho. Mandala.
Sa jo be je je me do
zhang ri ra lin shi ni de kian ba di song ge jin de me de bu wa ge zhe ge nang da ji la je ba shu yi dang guru ratna mendala kam nirya dayami. Refuge and bodhicitta.
Song je je
dan so ge che nam la chang chu ba du da ni kyao su chi da gi chi ni ji be su nam ge zhou la ben ji song ge zhou ba shou
Chedang sogi chenam lai Changkya Rölpai Dorjé Gyatso chi dagi chenyen gibe senam gi Drola penje sange dropa sho Chedang sogi chenam lai Changkya Rölpai Dorjé Gyatso chi dagi chenyen gibe senam gi Drola penje sange dropa sho.
Yeah, so we'll continue.
Oda gede shaja chembo gunor tangi nganzo geje sheba noji. Ani on chonchol poger chujul hagola tawa nojiga. Nodo godon konshewa. Dedo teni ngiz sha asar hago wachini.
Right.
Tatene ledechini dekares.
So the instruction about the small child entering the temple and just kind of gazing and appreciating with open-mindedness, this comes from the Ganden Mahamudra teachings, and the idea is that
Noto kandis sazunge karishiwa ina korota ngisamba zone hago wachonela.
Yeah, and it's just this open-minded, clear awareness, being aware of whatever projection or appearance that is arising, just that bare awareness.
Da noto shul pama manrowache se tishulwa.
Right. So we don't want the mind to follow those projections, but we want to be aware.
Oda nganzu pe mo she sai mas oda chego no pasa sona demo ta mandu as ko kange chire mato ta ye chego no masawa cheno tsawa karina demo ta yo arwas.
So it's like observing but not placing the mind in danger. The example is if we see like a whirlpool in the water, right? Once we fall in, it's very dangerous and we're completely overcome. But if we just observe it from the banks of the river, we can just notice it.
Ta tagarul tigor gede shaja chemo nola yona sosol nipa yona
Yeah.
yona rako kijato noto bete ches tangi shegres kecha ale betake yona rako keseri chuyuki kera chembo
Ale.
chuyuki
Chisana tawadi konso bajuk denso ziagine chi.
da nojiga chiyo arwa chi
Chi.
chi mboteli yo
Kala tubia. Yeah, Raji. Lasa.
pogene sinda kazu yusona
Yeah.
축거라잖아 바꿔 또 봐지 용기다 때문에
Loso.
하고서 pogenda yugerwa
Yeah.
소소 들라티네 바꿔
Yeah, and there's a more advanced practice which is explained in the Ganden Mahamudra, which is like wielding a sword over the head, and through continuously rotating this sword, whatever sort of thoughts are coming, they are able to be cut through.
어다 노지
디겔와다부치.
세시오스테 만다와지 레스로토 당길라사 송아 당기테 코로 도노 마테네 코로 때무다네 대야데와 니 하고 와서.
So the first method here is just a bare awareness, just observing the rising and falling of the thoughts, right? That's the first method.
요나세레 단다 만다와지 소소 네파 만다와지 요나 어다 노토 가르시와 이네 카투 파 좀마서 가레스.
But if one is more advanced, if one has the capacity, then one can be constantly rotating the sword over one's head, sort of cutting through each of the projecting thoughts.
This one 어다 된거 그때 노지 gelug쇼를 대슈 침보 요아레. 다 카투 파.
Right.
꽈야 돼.
And so in the Gelug tradition, the more sort of popular, or we could say well-known of those two methods is the one of immediately being aware of and confronting the projection, like the sword that is constantly rotating above the head.
And Geshe
thinks that, although it's present in our tradition, it's within the other traditions that just sort of observing the rising and falling and so forth, that this is the more popular method. But just to say it's more popular doesn't mean that both are not present in the Gelug and also in the other traditions. So it is upon us as the practitioner to decide which of those two methods is more helpful for our mind. So what's the argument for confronting the namtak or the mental projection? Namtok, right? Sorry. Did I say namdak? I meant to say namtok. No, not sleeping, just in a state of confusion. That's normal. So in terms of tabit sas tata trenbajeswa lash yangyo. So the problem with these namtok or these mental projections, right, is that if we get in a habit of being led by them, they become fuel for the afflictions, right? They're connected to the afflicted minds arising. So we know this, right? Like, let's take an example of a namtok, a projecting thought about somebody. So we see that person, they maybe give us an expression and you can see, oh, I can tell it's going to be a rough day with this person. Then we think, oh, this person is not trustable. They did all of these things to me. And then, right, the aversion, the anger, the afflictions are arising very easily, isn't it? And sometimes when those afflictions arise, these can compel us into negative actions, which becomes the accumulation of unwholesome karma, right? So that is a problem.
So when we
So one of the great Kadampa Lamas said that he had only one task, one job in his practice, which was to hold his spear, stand guard, and to use it against any of the afflicted minds that arise.
And it's
So that being said, when we speak about mental projections, when we speak about the afflicted, about the afflictions arising, when with mindfulness we notice them when they're like a small fire, those small fires are much easier to put out, right? But when there's a great fire, you know, like those huge bushfires we see in the world, it is very difficult to put it out until it has burned through. And it's a danger because if we liken, for example, anger to fire, then that fire of anger, what it does is it burns through the seeds of our positive potential. So it can be quite a dangerous thing. Dua. Yeah, dene. Ale, kare takchi. Dene kare se. Lela voice she.
Me to sort of tawa yung duas, tawa tawa.
Hakoson.
Then no ji makundo chasawo yina.
Yeah.
Dipa chembo yina.
Yeah.
Nagun tawa rawo chiko.
Right. So also we'll become known as an angry person. So there's kind of a Tibetan saying, I'll try to deliver what I understood of it. So then when the anger of fire is burning, right? When we know an angry person is arising because it's like that energy is there, like the smoke of the fire. Losa.
O korokate korol neva shikitri tondre koseju chan o senje yozu gite paji dot zamaranga majigo tenda dot go mendri kundo sabon dius in koseju te chwaswas.
So it was at that moment, right, that Dharmakirti, he kind of saw that sentient beings were like this, that the energy of all sentient beings was like this smoke, the smoke arising from anger and so forth, and he became very sort of discouraged in his bodhicitta resolve and thought, if all sentient beings are like this, how can I possibly liberate every sentient being?
Oh, tani ta korogit yu Tresap dole de ya yuenya la. Ami zhen salma ka de son tanga shonju se pa is.
And he sort of threw up the slate upon which he was writing and said that when this slate falls to the ground, I have to give up my promise to benefit every single sentient being.
Oh, tene do de ma ka ze mi zare de in do mi sa ya
Yeah, but once he threw up the slate never fell back to the ground.
Oh, tene mi ya shen ta ga jo mi mi se do de zune la. O choro se ju chepa che cho se ju cha go ma res. Choro ju de ma ya po zo shu de ma go pa na pe do chen bo yo.
And when he looked into the sky, he saw that it was Mañjuśrī himself holding out his hand and preventing that writing slate from falling. And he told him, do not become discouraged. You should continue to compose a text, and that is the way that you will benefit countless sentient beings.
Oh, ta de la tene ta ta pa de chema no de se re ha levi ta ke da chemo cha ya ji ta tinen go chi chu ba res.
And he continued to write what became the Pramanavatika, the Pramanavatika. So the Pramanavatika is... I'm really getting the sauce today. I'm not sure what I did. Anyways, so the Pramanavatika, the treatise on valid cognition, right, which is a very important text which is studied to this day.
Oh, ta ti do den jo me go chi yu ge de. Jo me go do ti yu ba res.
Yeah. Do ma re jongre. Do se na tomba chom de. Tiagi do de. Yeah, sorry.
Ha ma go ma cha. Do de pa chi yu de bel jo ge chi su sa de sa so.
Ale.
Dile yu ar se yu ar do de.
Jangkunjo
De sa so jo ge chi su lo re.
And so the story goes that eventually that once the text was completed, that writing a slate was kind of preserved, and that writing slate, the one that he initially threw into the air and was protected by Mañjuśrī, that some of it remains in the place where the great monasteries had the Jangkunjo, or the Great Winter Debate, where Sera Drepung and Ganden would debate the Pramanavartika together.
Mo ka she ti do de ti se ta ta ki su na. Le la wo to ni pe lo jo ya ran do ya de shira.
Dodi kare?
Yeah,
and it was said that when the monks were sitting near where sort of the remnants of this slate were, that it would be much easier for them to kind of study and debate, that they had greater mental clarity. Such was the power of that relic. So this is sort of one of the famous histories related to that story. Okay. Yes, Tadro.
Yes.
So now we will turn to our text. So just like in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, right, when we set our aim for practice, the aim is something very lofty and something that is a little bit far off. But in terms of actually reaching that aim, this is something that we accomplish in stages. So we want to engage sort of with curiosity, with a happy attitude as we study the text, maybe occasionally having a little bit of an argument, like Geshe and myself do. I don't know if it was an argument, just me complaining. So anyways, we will continue. So then, in terms of what we have studied, we talked about how to rely upon the spiritual teacher, and we talked about how this has 6 outlines. Yeah.
This one, Lama Rim, Dalai Lama Rim, Lama Rim, ani teacher tembi peye mate menyeme.
So you can find these on page 126, but I'm going to say them as Geshe said them, which is like a very condensed version of each of those praises. The definition of the teacher, the definition of the student, how the student relies upon the teacher, the benefits of relying, the disadvantages of not relying, and a summary of those points. And so in terms of where our discussion ended last time, we were speaking about the spiritual teacher and in particular the qualities that the spiritual teacher should possess. And this was based upon scriptural citations, in particular Maitreya's ornament for the Mahayana Sutras, Dodejin in Tibetan. So this is a quote from the ornament of Mahayana Sutras that you'll see in all of the Lam Rim texts, the Great Treatise, the Middling Treatise, treatise, and so forth.
오다 자와 가존도 사르티니 신이 더와셔와 녀셔와 여들라바 제지 륜기시 되니 라도돌라 마게데 제더니 쇼가본라테.
So Geshe-la is reciting that verse from memory. Fortunately, I have it here. Rely on a spiritual teacher who is disciplined, peaceful, thoroughly pacified, has superior qualities, joyous effort, is rich in scripture, has realized suchness, is a skilled speaker, has a loving nature, and has eliminated dispiritedness.
오다 라마 때나요 다다 게시네 때나요 다지 더와 라와서 돈에 다 세지 시시 더와야 버지 그래 수근도와.
So one who is disciplined, this is how Sophie, and it is a perfectly good translation. She's saying disciplined as a translation of Dulwang. I would say subdued. I would say subdued here. So one who is subdued, ane sum kare sum.
다 라와서 지 좀
Right.
더 더와지.
Yeah. And one who has been subdued through the 3 higher trainings in ethics, concentration, and wisdom.
오다 조조다 타발은 로그 야라와스 오다 가로스 강가로로다 라마인 로마인 조조 되냐데 또 타바이자 다 타발은 로그 야라와스.
And also just to keep in mind, like, where do we want to go through subduing the mind? It is to the state of moksha, or liberation. And it is for the purpose of reaching liberation, actually, that we need a lama, that we need a student, and that relationship is required.
다 타위 대화를 꽉이 쪼대 아니 다 녀모바 사베도 지바세는 그 요아래 아니 마리바 사베도 지바다 다 쪼레스.
So in terms of what is preventing us from reaching that bliss of liberation or moksha, it is the afflictions along with their imprints. We could also say it is ignorance along with its imprints.
녀모비 사베세나 보게 이제 다 타바토스나 본토고 요아래.
Right.
녀모비 바차세나
Right.
타바토나 본토고 요 말이에요.
So those afflictive seeds along with their imprints, if we think about it like that, those afflictive seeds can be purified when we reach moksha or liberation. But the imprints left behind by the seeds of affliction can only be completely purified if one achieves Buddhahood.
그러니까 니바 임바 지바래 되는 오코니로 다 니바 휴치 니바만 라와 침보 요아래. 다 참모세 게제 요말 다 보고 약 매와서 약 갈카고.
Right. So in terms of the seeds of the afflictions and the imprints left behind by them, they are kind of different levels of potentiality, and the imprints left behind by the seeds of the afflictions are much more subtle. Therefore, it is more difficult, right, to apply the antidotes to them.
그러니까 주 말에 시바 말에 이나이니 빠지레스.
So they are potentialities. We can't say that so both the seeds of the affliction and the imprints left behind, they aren't exactly consciousnesses. They don't have form, but they are potentialities.
어다 데몬드제스 미지다 다대 제법만 된다 그래서. 그래서 어다 데레 다 되는 것들은 안조 얘다. 안조 롱가 지는 그 롱가 인지 미니 쪽에서 사자 야부지는 그거요나. 롱가 꽉이때 뒤에 신다고 돼. 녀모비 사베
So if you think about this path to liberation, right, we can think that we're walking along this path and there are various obstacles. There may be a poison bush. So that poison bush that is blocking the path, this is like afflictions and the seeds of the afflictions. And when we say afflictions, of course, this is things like pride, attachment, aversion, anger, and so forth.
그래서 어다 telling 안zo 노지 페시에서 사바이네 페페님 본디 와스 어다 저거 라바테 리테 모노 나와 띵엔 저거 라바테 라바테 모노 나와 아시라가 라바테 다 뒤기 파체키 라데테 나와.
So to eliminate this poison bush, which is blocking the moksha marga, the path to liberation, then what do we need? We need, like the strong body, training in ethics. We need, like the strong arm, training in concentration. And we need, like the axe, which is actually going to help us cut through the trunk of that poison tree, the training in wisdom. We need those 3 things.
This one, oda tere, tashitu labasa sena shiro tumuin yoleres. Shiro pala yole chimboyare, tumuin yoleres.
Ale, yang sherabdi. Right. So, in the general understanding of trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom, actually, they have different understandings, but the essence of those trainings is something that you find not only in Buddhism, but also in other Dharmic traditions. But when we speak about the three higher trainings imbued with the mind of refuge, this is something that would be exclusive to the Buddhist tradition. Yeah, so when we talk about these three trainings, we usually say lakpe lapasum. So lakpe lapasum means higher trainings, right? Or superior trainings. And so that higher or superior classification related to those trainings in ethics, concentration, or wisdom, this is determined by whether the mind of refuge is present or not. Right. And so then in terms of where we were, we are on page 128 in this volume. We covered the first quality of being subdued or disciplined. So we are on the second quality, peacefulness, shiwadi, right? The second quality, peacefulness, refers to possessing the training in meditative concentration that abides peacefully on the current focal object of mind, not distracted by external objects. So this is His Holiness's commentary. So that's the second. It's the second of the three trainings, concentration. The third, thoroughly pacified, applies to the wisdom realizing selflessness. Thus, the spiritual teacher possesses the qualities of the training in wisdom too. It is not enough that these three ways of taming our mind merely be called qualities of realization. Rather, it is taught that through these three trainings that accord with the general teachings of the Buddha, one must tame one's mind. Yeah, so you see that actually when you look at the ornament for the Mahayana Sutra's quote at the beginning of this section, when it speaks about disciplined, peaceful, and thoroughly pacified, this is actually connected to these three higher trainings. Losogi. Yeah. With respect to taking care of others, the fourth, so this is in the list of the qualities of the guru, the fourth, superior qualities, refers to possessing more of the qualities taught in the triple basket than the disciple. And when one teaches others what is to be adopted and discarded, one does not become discouraged. Yeah. So this does not mean, just to clarify, this does not mean that the teacher has to know all of the various material of the three baskets. It merely means that in order for them to be an effective teacher to a particular student, he or she must have a knowledge of the Tripitaka, the three baskets, that is greater than that of the student. Yeah. 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 Agoson. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Ni mashiba kishiye mambo yares.
Ale.
Ni mashiba.
Nge ma shepa. Ko share mambo yares. Yeah.
Kishiye ni mashiba mambo yares.
Ale. Then di double chagire do.
Se she was hale ke bache maro
Ale. Losa.
No ma de lagi yares.
Tites pendo me. So then Geshe-la was saying that, for example, if you ask somebody about a particular teacher or lama and you say, he or she so and so is such a great scholar, and then the person responds, well, there's some things that I don't know that they know, but there's also a lot of things that they don't know that I know. That's kind of like a polite way of saying maybe they're not so scholarly. So maybe you think, okay, he doesn't like him or her all that much. I wasn't sure why that was funny, but anyways, that was what was said. Yeah. So it's kind of, I guess it's like a subtle dig at somebody who may be very famous, may be very well known, which is often how we judge people, right? But saying that, actually, like, there's some stuff I understand that they don't, I guess. Yeah. So just continuing along, when one teaches others what is to be adopted and discarded, one does not become discouraged, but rather has the fifth quality, joyous effort, that enables one to teach. So not becoming weary or tired of explaining to others, and if you need to explain a point again and again, being able to do that with continued energy. So our joyous effort, we want to have our joyous effort as something that is stable, like a constantly and even flowing stream. And when one's effort is like that, it becomes easier to bring forth those positive mental qualities. One, furthermore, is rich in scripture, the sixth quality of being learned in the explanatory treatises. So this means that the teacher, he or she, not only are they able to explain the holy dharma, but they are also able to back up their explanations by integrating them with quotes from the sutras and the shastras. So there is a source for their opinions and teachings.
So
the seventh, a realization of suchness, refers to either the realization of selflessness of phenomena or a profound understanding of that. And Geshe-la said that His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, in this gloss, you see that he uses the word profound. This is very deliberate. It's letting people know that it's not so easy for a teacher to have a realization of suchness. This is quite a big thing. In the context of teaching others, one needs the eighth quality to be a skilled speaker, who is adept at teaching what is timely according to the listener's disposition and mental continuum, appropriate to time and place. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, so then there was a Lama who was explaining the difference. So there was a story about a Lama who was talking about the Megak and the Mayengak, right? Which is sorry.
tema mo wata sara da yin ta da
I
o ta da ta tenda lama koro ki ta she ji yo ba kanga lolo ti se chi she yo mares
Yeah.
ta she sa tel kaze rogodu lojo kaze yo
Yeah.
me mo ta
So what is taught, right? This has to be taught depending upon what the students understands. So the Mayangak, which is the affirming negation, and the Megak, which is the non-affirming negation, the student had kind of no idea what these words meant.
lo cho cho res ni la so so chi sin ko no so ma ja ro tane ke ba chi ke je bar mega se kar re serela ke pa tin de da manda liwa ko de se ja pare ken de se ja ke khoro ke par de se ja ke ki pe ja no yo ba no de se mo ta se pa shu de del du ya cha so res
Right. So the danger is if you ask the Lama to explain something like this, and they're explaining like the affirming negation versus the non-affirming negation, and the Lama here was very learned, he was quoting a lot of scriptures, giving a very vast explanation, but the listener, in this particular case, the man who was not so learned, the listener actually became more confused than he was before he listened to the teaching. Yeah. And so what's the problem here? What does this illustrate? It illustrates that the teacher was extremely skilled, but they weren't skillful in what to present when and to which disciple. So that is also a problem. Yeah, Yeah. So then, anyways, this man was more and more confused, so he approached another teacher who was not very learned, right, in philosophy, and he said, okay, can you explain to me what a non-affirming negation is? Yeah. Yeah. So in order to explain this to the man that got confused, this less learned teacher, he drew a large circle on a piece of paper. And he said, do you see a horse within this circle? Do you see a horse within this circle? And the man said, I don't see a horse. It's very clear. I don't see a horse in that circle. Yeah. So the lack of the horse in the circle is the megakroa, non-affirming negation. Yeah. And so then he understood, okay, so I understand that this non-affirming negation, it is talking about something that is not. It is talking about something that is not. He was right away able to have that understanding. Yeah, yeah. And so this is actually sort of, it's a very difficult point, but it is through these conversations that we begin to develop an understanding of emptiness. What? Mainga kare. Yeah, Lama Tsongkhapa kare. So several Lama song. Mainga hakoson. Dijena di komason. Ale, right. Could say tesana? Lo jipshu kapla eh. Tes lo chewa kapla dona. Lo chungwe kapla. Ale. Mainga. Yeah. Then okay. So it was said that when Lama Tsongkhapa was sort of we can say in the early stages of his spiritual career, I guess you could say, that his view of emptiness was actually very much based upon the affirming negation, of the affirming negation. And this is because most of the previous scholars within Tibet, when they were explaining emptiness, they did this by way of the affirming negation. Megak. And then as Lama Tsongkhapa became older and had a more sophisticated understanding of emptiness, his view of that was more informed by the non-affirming negation.
This one?
Rio mares. So just to kind of make this easier to understand, when we speak about an affirming negation, we could say a sentence like, no mountain. There is no mountain.
This one. Yeah.
If we say there is a mountainless meadow, that is an affirming negation.
This one?
Yeah. So if we say there is no true existence, that is a non-affirming negation.
This one?
If we say a non-inherently existent self, that is an affirming negation. Yeah. If we say that there is a non-inherently existent flower, that is an affirming negation. Also. So Geshe is going to tell a story related to this quality of the teacher, but later. We're going to get through the text first. Yeah.
Kepa de Lami Teni Zo Chewa Gwa Zai Dani Je De Tuji Zombo Shi Giba de Gache Dejer Tsendele Shima Zo Chewa Ronle Je Zo Chewa Sheba Jepe Jalaso Zombo Ichi Longes Tobashi Gi Mapawashi Yinago Loyin Gepi Tubon Jawa La Shia Ye Dedon Jengi Pito Ne Tubon Jawa Gonago Tubon Goma Te Ronge Par Loi Gyatso Kawa Di Tse Paro Bingini Jo Rongla Tse Noyo Malashi Somba Nodagi Tone Pededrigi Giba Dedo Tsu.
So, the primary characteristic of a guru is the ninth, a loving nature. Having a kind heart is very important. Likewise, they should prioritize the next life over this life, others over themselves, have a special pure altruistic attitude, and be someone on whom we can trust and rely. Even for an ordinary person to become a trustworthy friend, while it is possible they become a friend due to their education or wealth, to become a true friend requires that no matter how much we trust them, they never deceive us, and that they create happiness and well-being through pure intentions.
Yeah.
So this paragraph is very nice because it tells you the qualities that you should look for in a good friend, and also the qualities that you should look for in a good Dharma practitioner as well as a teacher, right? So this loving nature, or we could say like a merciful nature, out of the various qualities of the Lama, in some explanations, this is the most important one, actually. And we can also see that here is the definition of what a Dharma practitioner is. The measure of being a Dharma practitioner is whether one places more importance in the next life than in this life or not. And one can know for oneself whether one does that or not.
So
it's not such an easy thing, actually. And seeing others as more important than oneself, that is the measure of being not just a Dharma practitioner, but a practitioner of the Bodhisattva path. One sees others as more important than oneself. The 10th quality, the elimination of dispiritedness, means that one does not shy away from the weariness that comes from having to explain things to disciples again and again, and that one can fulfill the aims of the disciple. So willing to explain again and again without frustration until the person understands. Geshe says I was laughing. No, I have to say, like, Geshe is very generous with explaining things again when I ask. He might get a bit cheesed, but he's always very generous. No, I wasn't being sarcastic. You're very good about that. I'm very grateful because some teachers just would not explain again. I'll tell you right now. So however many times you need to ask a question again, seeking clarity, if they need to explain something again in order for you to arise understanding them, being willing to do that.
신의 체니 수가 라바선지 농게 시라가 라바데 고사가 담에 또 비시라 델리스도 시저진이 뭐 지저 담에 또 기피 되니 또 바시 서더자와 대다이.
Maitreya is ornament for the Mahayana Sutras, which is a text primarily adhering to the Yogacara tenets, posits grasping at a self of persons as the root of existence and grasping at a self of phenomena as an obstruction to omniscience. So I just want to gloss the translation here because I think some people might not be familiar with this terminology. So when we say an obscuration to omniscience, this is often translated as a knowledge obscuration. So I'll continue. In the context of the defining characteristics of a spiritual teacher, the training in wisdom out of the three trainings refers to the wisdom realizing selflessness of persons. And since one must realize selflessness of phenomena as an antidote to obscurations to omniscience, has realized suchness was stated separately.
So the
grasping at the self of phenomena is said to be a knowledge obscuration, or here Sophie says an obscuration to omniscience. Semsampa dang di nigarwa. In both Yogacara, in both the Yogacara and the Chittamantra or mind only philosophical schools. In the Prasangika view, however, this is not the case, right? In the Prasangika view, both the afflictive obscurations and the knowledge obscurations or obscurations to omniscience are considered kare tegiwala yeah ale are considered afflictive obscurations rather than knowledge obscurations. Yeah. So actually this is a significant difference in the Prasangika view, that these are both considered afflictive obscurations. They are not considered knowledge obscurations. So I'm asking Geshe, if that's the case, then what are the knowledge obscurations or the obscurations to omniscience in Prasangika? And Geshe says the imprints left behind by the afflictions.
Yeah.
So as Nagarjuna states, so Geshe said this is another list that Nagarjuna, just pointing out, Nagarjuna lists 12 qualities. Rely on one with 12 qualities who is well studied, has great wisdom, does not seek material things, has bodhicitta and great compassion, patience to endure hardship, little discouragement, a wealth of instructions, is liberated through the path, is skilled in different lineages of beings, and knows levels of spiritual maturity.
Oh yeah, that does it. Tapa geish in teche tela kebado, Shonju Sembi, Tuju, Sugeshan, Motongo, Shisu.
So Shantideva's way of the Bodhisattva, never, even at the cost of one's life, should one forsake the spiritual teacher who observes the vows of the Bodhisattva and who is well versed in the Mahayana. And so Geshe said that this Geshe said that the one from Shantideva is specifically the definition of a Mahayana spiritual friend or teacher rather than just a Buddhist spiritual teacher.
고zo 치마와 tel라 내시드 일라 마셰바 샤샤나 tel라 츠틀라 니바도 모트티바 투바도 데마 니체와 옌제 tel라 조 니파메바 제와 마쇼와치 nomba 제도 데나 쇼지세베 게이시니 노바 토제 조바예바 리바 샤데 쇼지세베 돈비 츠틀라 니시 마뇨바도 시에메바 시에비 츠틀라 니바이 로라 마쇼와 마이베 모트티바이 Gombale shui gewa konyo rungwa tochi tupa to denpa, ninji to denpe, ni tsewa yi, di tsendala rungke dewa pone yenje tela jowa yi, tosui. Tela ye chi tenpa ti jajaga.
Lam Rim cha tsangwa zhosong. Lam Rim tsash.
Oya, tela ye, te ye la chi tenpa na pa tsayin jipi, tenpa tong, poba nyomba mebi, jipa meba yi. Yenda ge nipa to shawa to tawa to mota jeba to mondebi tsino, senche lupa shupa nomba na tsupa nola zeba yi, ko jewo ta chi tenpa la, to tong deshi ngawa meba yunsa mashowa yi shiso sumba tong.
So, from that renowned as the incomparable Jo Atisha's auto-commentary, The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, what qualities make a bodhisattva a spiritual friend? They abide in pure ethics, are well-studied, have realizations, have loving compassion, apply themselves to the welfare of others, are fearless, have patience, and are without discouragement. Understand that if they possess those 8 qualities, they have the complete aspects of a bodhisattva virtuous friend. Since they abide in the ethics of the bodhisattva vows and prevent faults, they abide in pure ethics. They are well studied because they do not have untrained minds. They have attained virtues arisen through meditation and possess realizations. Since they have compassion, they have loving compassion. They have cast away their own happiness and apply themselves for the welfare of others. When they teach others, their memory and courage are not reduced through fearful anxiety, thus they are fearless. They have patience for contempt, blame, criticism, condemnation, undesirable speech of others, and for sentient beings with distorted perspectives. They lack weariness and discouragement and have great vigor for teaching pure Dharma to the fourfold assembly.
Yeah. So
Geshe said very self-explanatory from Lamp of the Path. Furthermore, Lord Atisha said, one should rely on a guru possessing 4 attributes, being wise and thus not disregarding the view, being venerable and thus not disregarding ethical conduct, not striving for this life and striving for enlightenment. So normally when we speak about Atisha, so normally when we speak about Atisha, he was famous for having over 100, maybe 108 gurus. And out of those gurus, there was one who he held with special regard, from who he received the instructions for a rising bodhicitta. And this was Lama Serlingpa, or Sudvana Dvipi. And it was upon hearing his name that, he would have a very strong reaction, like his hairs would stand on end, tears would well up in his eyes when he thought about this Lama.
Yeah.
So Lord Gampopa said the Guru must possess 3 attributes. They lead others on the path through great wisdom. They are unable to bear the suffering of others due to their compassion, and they do not live for this life. So I just want to be clear that where we are now, we've had the quotes that His Holiness the so this is His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama's gloss. So we've had quotes with His Holiness backing up his opinion, and now His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama gives a critique of the Guru institution. So as people studying the Dharma, Geshe said, if you take anything from this chapter, it should be what are the qualities necessary for a qualified teacher, right? As a practitioner, it's very important to know that.
la zhong ye ba di ri la mi che chi ma yi.
So, a guru becomes a guru through having disciples. Without disciples, there is no guru. Guru and disciples are only mutually designated in dependence upon another. Yet these days, being a guru is considered a status. Maintaining Lama estates and names without any disciples is considered a quality of a Lama.
So I
should say, nothing not understandable there. His Holiness quite clear.
Rongre pebi shitso no geishi ne tsede lame shawa shene pe yete chatsung yecho geishi che kemo to lama che kemo sewa sole tiki mi shi mena tetsong ji tsa chenpo mashe ji tiki yete yeme to ji tabo yeme la mati pa rinpo che shi tsa chenpo tsite la zhong ji che giga chenpo she pe mi tengen pa shi yo.
So His Holiness 14th Dalai Lama continues, in Tibetan society, there might be a virtuous friend having all the qualifications necessary to perform the activities of a guru, but because they are not so-and-so geshe or so-and-so lama, or do not have the title of tulku, they are considered less important. Furthermore, without considering whether such a tulku has any qualities or has even tamed their mind, we might consider the title Rinpoche incredibly holy and think that it's necessary that they have an elaborate Lama estate. This is a terrible model.
Oh, this one, this Lama to Tuki Chevala, Major Jate, Lama Yela took my imbana, Gaditala, Peki Pachewa, Koza, Sharabini, Shepa Inago, Moncheva, Tuma. Pai tarini jakane tasala pete losanji yamiri zomba rewe chechi ngawa tole ju yu chembo bodanga la yongze lo ne lo mache chazu lo ne je lo shi jibi zawa shin de chela geshi jaka tongo tongji cheta kaso jolon so lonso che zo gosi tchen bezo chimbi jogi shina mato yete chi shise dembe ge ji lorambe to cha jate ji talu garwe jita june chitu koshi sungwa ji jula chenye to nde ngwa to cha ja rewe rejo ji bi ge ke to lama je kembo sha ju konyu ri chi ji ji teba re je gade se cho pe ba de no le rwa de no le me so no to tu shi che tu yo so ju ba le shu shi wo don ba Lama nine maze ane gadi set te jirimbochi yuche yempe ti tin de jupe gadi chaba teno jirimbochi jasa do ro gele pe tembe do por re.
Oh, so this is a long but important paragraph from His Holiness the 14th. Personally, I posit 4 possibilities between lamas and tulkus. Someone who is a lama but not a tulku would be the majority of the Ganden throne holders throughout history, who mostly come to the monasteries from faraway villages with nothing but a rucksack. For around 30 years, intermittently running out of tsampa, or roasted barley flour, each endures great hardships to study the 5 treatises year after year without a sabbatical. They follow a path of study for their entire lives, and thus are incredibly precious. For the sake of the large offering ceremony that they must conduct before they complete their geshe degree, they must put great effort into attaining the means for that, which may end up slightly tainted by the wrong livelihoods of flattering and hinting for requisites. However, as they do possess the appropriate level of knowledge, they sit for their geshe la rampa examination and then enter into a tantric college wherein they sit for another tantric examination on dharma and the topics of the teacher and listener within secret tantric texts. After that, they sequentially become the disciplinarian, deputy abbot, and abbot of a tantric college, and then either the Shartse Chöje or Jangse Chöje. Those who have ascended to the golden throne of Ganden through progressing through the vehicles in this way, those are real lamas. They are holy beings arisen from the complete perfection of the power of karma, aspirational prayers, merit, and bodhicitta. Furthermore, since the throne of Ganden is the throne of Je Rinpoche Tsongkhapa, the Ganden Tripas who sit on it are representatives of Je Rinpoche and the holders of the Gelug tradition.
Tene tuki yila tamate lu yo mato saso ya pochi mate tene tuki yila lama maimbe mana tuki medo lato ye ju chishibe yete to jite yete konla go taje me ba shawa shaje mebo homba tsabo yenge sisi shine zanji jalan koko tuki juwa teno lama mayo shitso no la tuki me ye ba re.
Following on from that, someone who is a tulku but not a lama would be someone with the title of tulku who has a lama estate and name but does not care for qualities such as dharma and knowledge or the taming of their mind. They have a multitude of plans and activities, are arrogant, misbehave, and deceive others through lies. Such a person is not a lama, yet they carry the name of tulku in society.
Ngemi pacha chembo ya pa tendra gonyo shato jayi temba shi yong de xiana tongchi segon keze zong se do cheze zo se ji yete yetse ni de tmo yong zha je tno de zhe pa tendra shi je la ja ne la me no ja xie ge ba ma do song song ji mo cha be gon ni xiana xin gen ze zha xie xie be men na
It's really heavy.
Ngepa tela kusa chume kunyi to di to che yima che tikawa taware.
It is
Tene lama to chukanika yimbe mana pena ngeji yonza shajili rumbuche, shaji chuyo rumbuche, nomba ni tawa, chuka che de to, kecha ni deche lama sonje machabi tsa chenpo re. Ka re rung re, mozo ne tuma lama la teba chenpo shi chung, gozo ne ka tong che shepanda male pi, Tina lama matemba mate kone chenyi tsummoto longi tamo taje nete shagi.
So we're continuing. So Geshe wanted to go a bit longer because I think he wanted to end on a more positive note. But anyways, we have to get through that first part. So His Holiness 14th Dalai Lama continues. It is not impossible that some of those lamas have biographies of inconceivable concealed activities, and that some have strong imprints from their past lives. But from the perspective of general Buddhist teachings, those manifest qualities accepted by general consensus of being learned, morally pure, wise, and skilled in application, debate, and composition, that should be the basis upon which we designate lamas. Otherwise, if we talk from the perspective of inconceivable concealed activities, who's to say whether autocratic tyrants such as Russia's Stalin, Germany's Hitler, or China's Mao Zedong were good or bad people, or wicked Mara or not in reality? As for someone who is both Lama and Tulku, my tutors Kyabje Ling Rinpoche and Kyabje Trijang Rinpoche, for example, were fully qualified Tulkus and inconceivably precious Lamas who were both learned and realized. Sometimes in our society, the general public will have great devotion for a Lama in the beginning, but eventually border on criticizing them. This is improper, so therefore, before one relies on a guru, investigate if they possess the characteristics of a guru and whether they are to be trusted. Yeah, so Geshe said that's a little bit of a more positive tone, so we will leave it there. So Geshe also says he would add to this, right, that even if we have taken someone with a teacher, we still maintain our intelligence. If they advise you to do something that is in accord with the Dharma, we should do our very best. If they advise you to do something which you believe contradicts the Dharma, then politely you explain you cannot engage in that task. Yeah, and even if it is something that is relatively positive, the instruction, if it is beyond your capacity to fulfill it, you can excuse yourself saying, I'm sorry, but at this moment that is beyond my capacity.
So
Geshe said that goes for pretty much everything. The only caveat he would give is that training in hearing, contemplation, and meditation, that's a non-negotiable instruction from the Guru. We must do that. So we'll do, so that concludes our discussion of this text today, and we will move on to the next text, Recognizing the Mother. We'll do one shloka, one verse from that. It will be number 7. Number 7, not finding my father when sought is in fact finding my mother. My father is found in my mother's lap. That's how these kind parents save their child, I am told.
This one, da lila was a gare. Nasa se saade pagete la beja. Page.
Nga seria di sem seri pala. So here, father is the sort of analogy for, Geshe said, that we call the self, or that we call my mind. That's what's represented by father here.
Mother
is the emptiness of the mind and the emptiness of the self.
This one, ta pageta in a mania ba setting aroso tandaning and zoologic yoleta, as we jaguars, na sajit, selji shayungarwa, ta nasa, Dombo shavi calico, dodon dawo.
So as we study and practice the Dharma, one of the exercises that we engage in is trying to locate the I, trying to pinpoint the self. And as we engage in that contemplation, we might have an appearance of, something possessing shape and weight of that idea of the self or I. And this comes when we look at external objects as well, when we try to find their pinpointable essence, whether a car, whether a vase, and so forth. That sort of initial cognition of the object, we think that there is something beautiful, pinpointable, solid, and existing when we first engage in this exercise. And especially it works with the example of a car. So what is our mind not seeing or not appreciating when that image of the solid, truly existent car, for example, comes up? It's not immediately recognizing that that car is merely an assembly of many, many, many tiny parts which have been configured together. It is arising dependently upon many different causes. So it's in the moments when we have a strong sense of self that it is said that it's best to investigate. So when you're having a really nice meal and you're thinking, I think that this is delicious, that I that is experiencing that pleasure in the deliciousness, that is the moment to try to look for, to try to locate that I or self. So strong feelings of joy or of liking something, that I, that feeling of the I is very present. So those are good times for investigation. Also really difficult times, like when you see someone that really annoys you, that you really dislike, and you have that strong aversion that's coming forth. This is also a good moment to try to investigate and locate that I. So this is one of the instructions for kind of coming to an understanding of emptiness, and in particular for locating that object of negation, which is very important. Also, when somebody abuses you, says something really unpleasant to you, right? What's the feeling that arises immediately? I need to give a response, right? The sense of self before we retaliate is something that feels very present. Sometimes when people get angry, they beat their chest, right? That's how kind of intense that feeling of the self is in that moment. So that shows like there's this kind of appearance of the I or the self as like this like really physical kind of present solid thing that is appearing in that moment. Yeah. Younger son? Yeah. So how the I is actually present and that false apprehension of the I as something that is truly or inherently existent, it is not so easy to distinguish between those two. If you're able to start to differentiate between those two, one is said to be developing a better understanding of emptiness. You're coming closer to a fuller understanding. So just to be clear, what we're investigating is our experience, without this realization, without this understanding, is that whenever we think of the self, coming together with that self is that appearance of inherent existence. Yeah. Right. Another exercise that's spoken about is you can in a dark room at nighttime, if you sort of place your hand in front of you and walk, the first object that you touch up against, there is a feeling of yul ranking jupa nga serdi ranking jupa. There's this idea that there's a real solid feeling of that object that you bump into, this real solid conception that it is something inherently existent. So that's one of the methods to look at sort of the selflessness of phenomena. So these are various kind of techniques that we can use. Yeah. So then, when we look for that findable thing in its true aspect, rangingani madrupagi netsudi palachagiresroa. So when we look for that self, or we look for that I or mind, and we are not able to find it, eventually we'll see that, and those are like the father, eventually we'll see that it can be found in the mother's lap, right? That it can be found within the wisdom of emptiness. So one way of looking at this verse is to say that the mother is representing emptiness, and the father is representing the dependent arisings that occur within emptiness. We have to develop an understanding of emptiness connected with dependent arising. So when we speak about an empty flower, for example, the basis of that particular emptiness is the flower, right? The basis of designating that emptiness is the flower. So that would be, the father would be like the flowers in this analogy. As we look through the flowers and separate the parts and so forth, we can see that the flowers are empty in nature, that their nature is emptiness. And so then one has found the mother. So my father is found in my mother's lap. That's how these kind parents save their child, I am told. So the mountains, the rivers, the trees, all of the various beings that arise, right? These arise from the sphere of emptiness, a familiar phrase. So that sphere of emptiness is like the lap of the mother here. Yeah. Right. So it's like all of the rainbows, they arise on the basis of the sky, and they dissolve back into the container of the sky. So that's like the mother's lap analogy here.
단단한 좀 매도라서 봐 가래 이나 이제 강가 뚱반면은 샤워래대. 나로서 대하 막고지 루지 좀 봤다대.
We don't realize that all of these conventional phenomena, such as the rainbows or like the other example, the flowers, are arising within that space of emptiness. And because we don't realize that, then we have this perception of inherent existence, this appearance of true existence. And on the basis of that incorrect appearance, samsara continues to circle, to cycle. If we realize that if we look for that truly existent object but cannot find it, Gonda.
Yeah. If
we realize that if we look for that pinpointable, truly existent thing, we will not be able to find it, then we can become free. We can emerge from samsara. Yeah. And so that we will be protected from samsara. And so that's what it means by kind parents saving their child. So through the kindness of our parents, right, emptiness and dependent arising, we can be saved, we can be protected from this constant circling through samsara. Yeah, so it's like you think if you have a really good parents of a child, then that child can be protected in the world. In this way, we can be protected by these parents from samsara. And this is why emptiness is so important, right? It provides this protection. It provides the means through which we can achieve both temporary and ultimate happiness. Yes. So we will end the session here. Let us dedicate the merits. And of course, as we dedicate the merits, if you have things to do, please go on with your day. But if you'd like to stay for Q&A, you are most welcome.
Changkya semjo rinpoche maje panam chejurche chewa nyamba meba yang kone konda bewa sho tongni tawa rinpoche maje panam chejurche chewa nyamba meba yang kone konda bewa sho Jambe pao jeda jemba don kundu zambo deon deje de deda kungi jesu dalo chir gewa deda tonje rado ngo dusu shebe gewa tonje ge ngowa gangla chodo ngaba de dagi gewe tsawa dego jang zambo jeje rado Ngawang Gangri Rawe Gowe Jengangde Bendon Dewa Male Jowe Ne Chenre Ziwan Tenzin Gyatso Yi Shape Side Bado Tenjurji.
So we'll invite questions if folks have questions. Any questions? Don't see. Oh, yes, I see a hand. Carol, yes, go ahead.
Hello, I have two questions. Shall I do them one by one?
Yeah, maybe that's better. Let's do the first one first.
Okay, there's something that's kind of got me for years. As part of the bodhicitta prayers, you say, I myself alone. And it's always felt kind of just me by myself, nobody else, that kind of isolating feeling. Whereas I need to remember there's so many people doing it, but I would like to understand Geshe Sonam's view of what's the Tibetan? I myself alone.
Ngarang rangi, yeah. I myself
What
alone.
is happening
That
there?
is the accurate translation of it. Yeah, but you want to know what it means, right? And does it mean that we're really on our own? Okay, yeah.
Well, kind of like what he would say about that.
Yeah, nganso jangchu gi sem kia gi tabdi nganso semai jidin so yore ro. Tene ngarang rangi, ngarang chikpo semshen tamshe devala parshagi instawochi. Ngarang rangi sena tene di kona tene lansang o ngarang chikpo di halepe kale kapogi tsorwachi yongire dua. Geshile di korla samsu karayesa.
me tangaro ronge sere ta yinji meji ngaro ronge so toba sogi sere powale gere ma to ko to du chale mi te chu chimbo ta poge ni pa chimbo chabe kala ro.
So it's a device. It's a device to give us courage. It doesn't mean you're alone, but it just means that, like, even if I had to do it alone, I'm going to do it. So those words are there to help us bring forth a really courageous attitude, right? That's the purpose of those words.
소소로 고가 첨부 요바 내서 강가 시소는 다 강가 가리나 셰토비가 다 디세 레슨 때 제용으로 왔으네.
And actually what it should do is it should help us realize that, like, once we have sort of completed the path, we will have that opportunity that we can continuously help others, and even if we feel like we're alone, we'll have that confidence to really think that we can do it. So it's supposed to inspire confidence, actually.
대깔에 가보게 저러 요르베 당가로 지보게 세나테스.
Yeah.
양가로 롱기 셰기 세나도 된 적이 있는 거 같은데.
So Geshe said, if you think by myself alone is a little heavy, you can just think I myself. So just say it like that. I myself will place them in happiness. Maybe that's a workaround.
다 때도 된대 요구로.
Yeah. And I myself, like that, all of us can say that and really mean it, right? So that's one way to get around that. And you had a second question.
Thank you. Yes, I like to hear the encouragement. It's very good. So next question. So fear is closely related to anger, like a mirror effect, a kind of aversion. So are the karmic effects of fear very close to the karmic effects of anger?
Okay. Fear and anger, right? Just want to make sure I'm understanding you. Fear and anger.
Yeah, well, I'm asking specifically about fear and whether the karmic results of fear are very similar to the karmic results of anger.
Okay. Legi drebu kontro dang jigpa dapo res. Di sena nganso kontro lang na di legi drebu dang jigpa chik chungna di legi drebu dapo rebesa.
미미미다 레전드 버스나 다시 왕가 마텔 콤바 모보시 지요나 근데 디 레전드 단달아요 콘도 모보시 지올래야 돼.
Yeah. 이네 코 직바당 컨트롤 다포레베스 디세그레.
지바도 콘도 지바 말했어. 지바 말.
Geshe doesn't think it would be the same for anger and fear. He doesn't think that. No. They're related as emotions, definitely, but he doesn't think that the karmic results of them would be that similar necessarily.
Because it's straight aversion rather than wishing to harm.
Karin said that the jigpa. So fear and aversion are two very different words in Tibetan, Carol. So which one do you mean? Do you want me to say aversion or do you want me to say fear? Because aversion isn't really fear; it's a dislike.
Well,
So Geshe said fear, if you think fear like, oh, I don't want to engage in this negative action because this would lead me to the lower realms, or, I don't want to go to that place because it's dangerous or so forth, that we can't say that would have a similar karmic impact as a result that anger would, right?
Okay, terror, is there a word for terror?
No, I don't think so. I mean, terror is just really, really intense fear, isn't it?
Yes. Well, with this one, because it isn't, what I'm talking about isn't aversion.
Okay. Well, I think then the answer holds, that it's not a similar result from the karma. I can ask again. I'm happy to ask again.
Okay. If you look at someone who's being angry creates fear in the other person.
Yes.
So what would you call the effect in Tibetan? What would be the effect of anger on the other person? And a lot of wars.
Okay, so Carol, I'm really confused now. So sorry, these are two very different questions, because the first question you asked was, is the karmic result of fear and anger the same? But now you're asking, what is the karmic result of anger if it causes fear in the other person? Or am I mishearing you? Because that sounds like two very different questions.
I'm trying to explain the question because you told me that fear and aversion were two different things in Tibetan.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to look for the vocabulary which will clarify what I'm trying to say. Okay. So if you have an angry person harms another person and produces fear in the victim, yes?
Yeah.
And then that snowballs. We have genocides and things happening. Anger, fear, anger, fear, anger, fear, anger, fear. They're very closely connected. So what word in Tibetan would cover the effect of anger in a victim, then producing anger afterwards? What would you call that?
I'm not understanding what you're asking, honestly. Like, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not understanding the question. So you're saying that someone is angry and they harm people, right? And when this happens on a very extreme level, that creates fear in those people. And then you're saying that the fear that those initial victims experience, that causes them to get angry? Is this what you're pointing to?
Mm-hmm. So what word would you use in Tibetan for that victim what the victim experiences that then changes into anger? What would you call that reaction of the anger of others? Because you said it wasn't aversion, it was...
Well, fear and aversion, fear is just being scared. Aversion is disliking. They can come together, but they're different. Yeah, I guess it's like...
Okay, well, if you can let me know the word for scared in Tibetan, then I can look it up. Thank you.
Fear, scared is the same, but aversion and fear can be connected, but they're not the same thing. That's what I'm trying to clarify for you. So if I translate it as aversion, you're going to get a totally different answer than what you get for fear. That's what I'm trying to communicate. Hello?
It's not happening as a discussion. It's got lost. So we can leave it at that so other people can ask questions.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to ask aversion? That's what I'm asking you.
No, because you said what I was describing wasn't aversion. So we need to,
it's not.
So that's not what I'm asking about. I'm asking about the zigzag effect, the domino effect of aggression.
Can I suggest if we ask Geshe-la to describe the relationship between aversion and fear?
Yes, that's okay. Yeah, that's good. Jigpa sorry, no, I'm just trying to. So Jigpa dang mi gaya gisem di Chigpa dapore duas ngaso dagsem di dapore bes roa. Shetang dang dapore bes. Yeah, Jigpa dang shetang. Yeah, so I think the problem here, Carol, is that they don't understand it as connected in the same way. Because he's saying he doesn't see a connection between fear and aversion, or even terror and aversion. He's not sure what you mean by a zigzag effect. He said there can definitely be aversion in the background when we're reacting in fear to harm, but that they're two distinct emotions and they don't always come together.
Thank you.
Yeah. So think about somebody that you really don't like, but you know that they don't have any power to harm you. you're going to have aversion for that person, but you're not going to fear them, right? Or there can be a particular food that you dislike because you don't like how it tastes. That's like an aversion, but it doesn't mean that you're fearful of that food. And you might have like an intense reaction. You'll say, I don't want to eat that food ever again. It was terrible last time. So it's a very intense emotion, but it's not necessarily fear. And this can be a reaction to people. It can be a reaction to a place. It can be a reaction to an experience, right? So they can be very distinct. But that doesn't mean that they can't come together. But it's not a necessarily a pattern. I think he's not seeing the link, Carol. Yeah, go ahead.
We're simply talking about fear turning into anger. That's all.
Yeah. Jigpa kontro chagiribes. It can't. No, fear doesn't turn into anger. Anger can arise in relation to fear. Fear can arise in relation to anger, but they don't. I want to make sure I get this very precise. Yeah. So he said that they can arise connected with each other in a situation. There can be a fearful situation that can arise anger. There can be a situation of feeling anger, and this arises to fear. But you can't say that fear becomes anger. When we say can't say, we're talking in a Buddhist sense, right? Like listen. So Geshe-la suggests, Carol, that you write an email if we're not kind of going in the direction that you're expected. I think this is just one of the places where our psychological understanding, and if you go by a Buddhist literal definition sense, you get a very different answer. I think that's what the problem is.
What you're saying is these two things have very different sources. Fear and anger have different sources.
Yongsa menjawa res, jigpa dang shetang dang kongtro. Yeah, so the substantial cause of them. So there's a caveat even here. So this is, if Kedrup ever annoys you when he asks you to ask your question again, please know it's not Kedrup being difficult. I just kind of know how sometimes when things go in Tibetan, how they can go sideways. So that's why if I get people saying things in a longer way, I can sometimes get you more. So what Geshe-la is saying here, this is the answer in fact. The substantial cause is not the same substantial cause. So that's a particular kind of cause, the Nyerlingigyu. It's not the same.
Even though the conditions may be very similar then.
Ken dapo res yine Nyerlingigyu chikpa mares. Correct. Geshe-la said the conditions can be very similar, but always necessarily. But certainly in some situations, the conditions can be similar, but the Nyerlingigyu, which is the substantial cause, is not the same.
Okay, well, I want to know more about that. Because this is very interesting.
Thank you for bearing with me, Carol. I hope you see I was trying to get you a precise answer.
I have no complaints.
Yeah.
I have no complaints. But it's important in relation to trauma and how we look at that in a psychological or a Buddhist way to understand these things in a deeper level. That's all. Totally.
And I think Western psychology and Buddhist psychology, they meet up in a lot of places, but the understanding of what particular terms mean can be very different. So that's where it gets complicated sometimes. Yeah.
So I am going to look up the substantial causes of fear and the substantial causes of anger and see what the difference is. Yeah. Because both of them rely on clinging to an inherently existing I, don't they? So
Okay.
what's the difference?
I'll ask that. Okay. Then and if other folks have questions, this will be but I think this is very interesting, Carol. So I want to ask this for you. Then jigpa nierlengigyu dang shetang nierlagigyu nierlengigyus mindrawa kareres. Nierlengigyu kareres labna?
Nierleg jikareres na rawa.
Yeah.
Nierleg jikareres rawa.
Yeah.
Ta bemi cheshe no senado koro. Tombo ta koro karsekar yim dewa diga.
Imidewa.
Yim dewa zo jiga so yare.
So Geshe said that aversion, when we speak about it, its substantial cause is an unhappy or dissatisfied mind. An unhappy or dissatisfied mind, we could say, is the substantial cause. Jigpa nyerlengigyu?
Tan jipa nyale jisena tan jipa sena ta me so karsekar. This kenza chirwa. Jipa sena ta chenda mandala tene ke yara was jipa.
Yeah.
Sheno chirwa
Right. Fear.
Ne sa chimbo chila tene.
Fear comes from a situation that threatens safety, that leads to a feeling of being scared. We could say that's the substantial cause. And Geshe said that actually, Carol, the substantial cause definition is not such a cut and dry one in the text like you get for aversion. Because like fear can arise from a bad situation. It can also arise from having committed an unwholesome action, worried about the consequences from that, right? It's like kind of like a broader category.
And anger?
Kontro nyerlengigyu?
Ta te dun dabon dabor tangila.
Shedangdang dabore.
Dabor.
Very similar to aversion.
Yim dewa tabo chila tene yong.
Geshe said you could say it like this. Aversion is coming from an unhappy or dissatisfied mind or disturbed mind. Anger is coming from an extremely unhappy or disturbed mind.
So
unhappiness is the substantial cause, just different level of it.
So that would mean that sometimes the anger is coming from a situation that threatens safety, though.
Some nganso jigpa latene nga kibochene de tugimendus mi dewa dabochik yongire duas.
Yeah, they do yaros, they do yar.
Could happen, yes, could happen.
So in that way, you have the same causes for fear and anger.
Dene a jigpa. No. You can have the same cause, but not the same substantial cause, Carol. Nyerlengigyu. So the nyerlengigyu, I'll say it again, the substantial cause for aversion is a dissatisfied or unhappy mind. The substantial cause for anger is an extremely dissatisfied or unhappy mind. Whereas the substantial causes for fear, Geshe said, can be a situation, can be a particular thing happening that makes one's safety feel threatened.
Yes, but anger can come from an unhappy mind from safety being threatened. So I don't really see...
It's not saying that they're exclusive. It's just saying substantial cause versus a condition, right? That's all.
Okay, well, I'm finding it... Okay, I will summarize these things as I understand and send more because it seems so close.
Send me an email, Carol.
Issues around safety.
Yeah.
The issues around safety come up a lot in relation to anger.
Yeah. No. Carol, feel free to write me an email and I can ask Geshe further.
Yeah. Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions? Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, we have a question from YouTube, from MOT Stable. If you were doing work and you had a breakthrough in skills, is it okay to have a desire of having achieved, or should we see it to be empty? However, with emptiness, the desire to improve may be downed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. I think I got the gist of it. Nganso leka che nganso migyu chi gogire duas. Tene mikyu di drugores leka che giyeres. Ine nganso drebu di nganso chik tobgi res so chik dua. Nganso chik tobgi res tobia di tompa dapo tongorebes. So tobia di so migyu di tompa dapo tongna. Dene mutune leka che gi sorwa tets medro gidu chichena.
Me tate ko tumba tato de machina te yung was.
Yeah.
Hagosan so ale tando ko toja te rosh yonat ni gachi chudu tono mate. Tumba kola.
Yeah.
하고서라.
Agasang.
조가 로 내가 제게 아니 다 그게
Yeah.
콘도시에서 냐모 저보시에서 예지가 와.
Yeah. Yeah.
대가지도 로지메 봐.
So Geshe-la said that if you are thinking that your resolve or whatever is going to be diminished by seeing the emptiness of your goal or the emptiness of the results of your work, this is a sign that you haven't got a full understanding of emptiness, that you're still working on it, which is true for most of us, right? But in that sort of situation, Geshe-la suggests that meditating upon the emptiness with an object of reference, take the self, right? Take the I as your primary object of investigation for the emptiness rather than that, if you're worried about that type of thing.
강에적이 세 간디지네 기소만 노지 매바다 다 대지다 tos다게 단단히 같이 물어왔어.
So it's really kind of a preliminary way to think about it is that these things that I'm holding to, whether goals or anything else, they do not exactly exist in the way that I think they do. They do not exactly exist in the way that they appear to my mind.
드니지데 다 첨모노네 첨보데 다 던지게 도발레게 눈에 땡주고 쇼를 가세 더더
The other thing too is that if your goal or whatever, thinking about the emptiness makes you think that it's sort of like diminished or not important, remember to bring in dependent arising, right? So it doesn't exist inherently, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist at all. So you could switch over to thinking about dependent arising. And also just to keep in mind that when we say empty, it's empty of something very specific. It's empty of inherent existence, and reminding ourselves of that can be really helpful. When we just say empty, 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 that might have us thinking it's not there at all, right? It just doesn't exist. That's not what we mean by empty in this case. So really important to clarify that. When we say empty of natural existence, together with that, we should hear arises dependently, right? Those two ideas should come together. So whether we talk about the object of attainment in your case or the attainer, right, the person who is striving towards that goal or that object of the attainer, they are not independent. Neither of those things is completely independent of coming together of causes and conditions. Neither of them is inherently existent. When you say that they are empty of being independent, when you think about that, they are not independent. Immediately what arises in the mind? Oh, they have to arise in dependence upon something else. So if we say, for example, we don't have freedom over where we end up in our next lifetime, what does that sentence tell you, right? It's like an affirming negation. We know that there are other causes and conditions which are going to arise, and our next rebirth depends on that. Yeah, you're not hearing that there's no future lifetime, right? It's just that the destiny of that future lifetime depends upon the coming together of other causes and conditions. Yeah. If you say, I don't know what's going to happen next month, that doesn't mean that next month isn't going to happen. It's just that we know that all of the events that are going to unfold next month, they're not totally within our control. Yeah. So we want to use these two together. Bodhicitta, liberation. Buddhahood. They are not independent. They are not inherently existent. What does that mean? That means they arise from the coming together, right, of various causes and conditions.
로지지 매사 되게 따다 고토면 되나?
Yeah.
롱와매.
Yeah.
롱매 댄스타니 원이
So not inherently existent means not arising independently, not arising, in and of itself. So if you think about this and thinking, if I think that it's empty, then I'm not going to feel anything, that sort of fear, that's going to go away, right? Yeah. So if you're veering on emptiness too strong towards it doesn't exist at all, whoever asks the question, that can be a reason for that feeling that's coming up.
Lama Tsongkhapa la yonjo mewa ta Ngawang gola tenju gola tenda tese za chega zishu da what.
So that's also why Mañjuśrī advised Lama Tsongkhapa. So Lama Tsongkhapa had this problem, right? When it seems that it appears that there's nothing that exists at all, that nothing exists at all, cultivate relative truth. Cultivate dependent arising, right? That was the instruction.
Tidikal tumba nyingine tedura maresi ki aresta da chena. Hakosa yombe wisana. Da ina yom kanga chu deori. Ani Lama Tsongkhapa go jane mo kanga ndo sana chena ko yomares.
So at that moment, actually, according to Mañjuśrī, right, this is the Buddha of wisdom critiquing Lama Tsongkhapa, just to be clear. At that moment, Lama Tsongkhapa seemed to be in deep meditation, right? He appeared to be in deep meditation on emptiness to the point that he was so absorbed that everyone else left the meditation hall and he was kind of still there. But what he was meditating on wasn't exactly emptiness, according to Mañjuśrī, right? He was having a strong experience, Geshe said, on the feeling level, on the experiential level, but he hadn't yet correctly discerned the view. So there's a pillar in that meditation hall, which is called the pillar of single-pointed concentration, because this is the pillar that Lama Tsongkhapa would sort of sit against as he was meditating. Yeah. So at that time, Geshe said that it's very likely that because of the feeling of the meditation, Tsongkhapa thought, I've really got it, right? I've really understood the view of emptiness, right?
Yeah.
So at that moment, right, eventually Lama Tsongkhapa had the opportunity to ask Mañjuśrī about that, and he was like, okay, that emptiness experience that I had in my meditation, right? It was like a huge thing for him, a huge feeling experience, right? He said, is this like the prasangika view, or is it the mind-only view, or what is it? And then Mañjuśrī said to Tsongkhapa, it's not the mind-only, it's not even the Vaibhasika, it's definitely not the prasangika view. You didn't realize any view. That's what he said to Tsongkhapa, right? Yeah. So he instructed Lama Tsongkhapa, keep these, note these instructions. Yeah. Yeah, he instructed Tsongkhapa. He said I shouldn't say he for Mañjuśrī. So sorry. The glorious Mañjuśrī, he instructed Tsongkhapa, write everything down, note down what I've said, then go meditate, accumulate, purify, and then revisit it again, right? And then you can come to an understanding of the view. Yeah. So what happened is he followed those instructions. Lama Tsongkhapa, he went into seclusion. He followed those instructions, and then he had a dream. And in this dream, Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita were present. And Buddha Palita in particular, he placed a luminous text on Tsongkhapa's head in the dream. And at that time, it was said that was when he realized he had really discerned the view. He had actually understood the view. Yeah. But still at that point, he hadn't come to the exhaustion of views because he hadn't realized the union of the emptiness he had understood with dependent arising. And so he cultivated emptiness dependent arising, finally, till he came to the realization of the union of dependent arising and emptiness, which is the end of all views.
어떤다 공용 파츠 내가 매봐 지고 야레스.
Nepa mepa sana?
동박이 땡줄을 만에 땡줄 동발을 만에 봐.
And so that union of emptiness and dependent arising arises at the point when you see they are not in contradiction. When we meditate upon dependent arising, it doesn't feel like, oh, this is going upon against emptiness. When we meditate upon emptiness, it's not feeling like, oh, there's something not fitting with dependent arising, right? It's a seamless union.
Yeah. 디세지를 만에 발레 용가 나타 가지고 다 옆으로서나 만에 발레 용거를 단다 파츠 조시해봐 용토고요 말이에요.
So we can come to a point where we see that emptiness and dependent arising are not in contradiction. But the next level, to see that emptiness is the assisting factor of dependent arising and dependent arising is the assisting factor of emptiness, this is very difficult. Right?
다 동바세를 샤게 되는 논초 땡주게 내서 제도야. 땡주게 내서 지통 대게 되는 동바 샤토 셀 샤토야 슌다 제도래.
So the sign that we have realized that, which is kind of like the high level, is that when we think about emptiness, dependent arising is naturally in the background. When we think about dependent arising, emptiness is naturally in the background, right? That's the sign of that highly refined view.
다 간주 관계 세월 가르냐 가르세나 릴라쇼 질라바이나 예라 못티바 메바데 tum바니게 체레스.
Yeah, 계승당 옌라
못티바
미티바 세나
마템바
마템바, right?
예라 마템바 메바데 tum바니게 체레스.
Right. Di malap, sorry. Yeah, we'll
야 tum바니세나 가르레스.
Yeah.
예라 마티바 메바.
Oh, so what is emptiness? Emptiness is empty of anything that does not arise dependently.
대체냐도나
If you keep that in your mind, that's going to help you. To whoever asked the original question. I've lost track of the original question now, but I believe it was something Dave read from Facebook or something. So I see some hands, not a true and do. So I see some hands, so I'm not sure who was first. Whether it was it Lou? Go ahead, Lou.
Sorry, thanks for your teaching, Lama, but it's a very basic question. It's just because I got a bit confused. I wasn't a teacher previously today with great teacher, and she was saying that when Lama Yesh is about reincarnation, and meant continues. When she went to see Lama Yesh reincarnation, he was a young boy, little boy at that time. And then when she saw Lama Zopa, and then Lama Zopa said, oh, he recognize you? And then she said, no, but I didn't expect it to, because, it's a different incarnation. So I got a bit confused about mental continues. So my question is, what part of me goes to the next life?
Yeah.
If gotcha. Like I'm Lou, so who am I? I know I'll be in different body, obviously. It could be a man, a dog, or whatever, but what part of me goes?
Yes, I think I got the gist of your question. Yeah. Nyechar dene sumshu kabla dene kandisla goredi Lama Yeshi gigetru chik kandisla gored kushu özel tuswa dene ngomi share dapo chik resro. Dene ko hale mandu samswa jela Lama zoperum buche tudu dene o özel di so ngoshe soes. Ngoshe masons ine ngoshe gores samso yo mares kariensana Lama Yeshi dang kushu özel di minjawa dapo chik res. Lama özel dang Lama Yeshi chipa yingo mares. Dene ko dela tene go tonsung. Konso gyun semgi gyun chiki yana roa shegyun dapo chiki yana dene trengo gi roas roa dene nga kewa jema drodu kewa jema lebsons di shegyun kandes dapo chiki res kandes mutune res chiwadire
me 다 돼도 단 된다 문다래 내서 리지 코테나 요다 못비천자야오 제 도보이는 드네 요아레스
야 하고선
라와 리지당 모치야 된가서 기바렌데 와서 시왕가만 내서 뭐 요아데 간가 코로포게 시와레 두지 요자게 되라
쳔바제
쳔바제 테스뇨로 요아레스.
So Geshe said that he has to give two possibilities here because it could be either of these two possibilities. So the possibility could be that the reincarnation actually knew perfectly well who she was, but because they thought that it would be more beneficial for her not to know that, they just had this aspect of not knowing her. That's possibility number one. Possibility number two is, we all reincarnate, but we're not necessarily realized. So for us, our mental continuum continues, but that doesn't mean that the memories of all the previous lifetimes are always with us, right? That's only the case in realized beings, that they can remember those things.
This one, da shijingine jibayina. Da shomba do nyi shonju se tumani se deji nyoya yo mares.
So you might ask, well, what can we be sure that we won't forget from lifetime to lifetime? If we've got the same mental continuum happening, and in a previous lifetime we realized love, we realized compassion, we realized bodhicitta, or we realized emptiness, right? The potential of that realization carries over. We don't have to start from the beginning. So we will remember that. Those realizations remain more stable.
This one,
But to say that you'd have to remember all of the people from your last life, even to say that for a being who possesses some realization would have to remember every single being from their past life, that's like a pretty tall order, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So it could be different.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. And I think I see Dave's hand.
Yes, we have one more question from Ellen Rosen, who asks, how can we be less fearful and angry?
Nganso jigpa nyungru tangya gitap dang kongtro nyungra tangya gitap kareyeresa.
Jipa nyur tuya gita do kondo nyur tuya rawa. Ta de na ramandar was jipa nyur tuya ta se ja chembo zone chi shu mombo ni chi ta thoba yina.
So Geshe said, having a vaster vision, appreciating the experiences that are beyond our own experiences, this will definitely help us be less fearful. It can help us be less angry too. So cultivating that vast sort of vision and appreciation, that can be very useful. So Geshe has heard that for astronauts who have so that some astronauts who have been to the moon, after they have that experience of viewing Earth from the moon in that really vast way, they're like, some of them will be less self-centered, less likely to be angry, because they've seen a very vast vision of what reality is. Gyatso tombayin sang.
Tanga pena nganzo sera yo bikala tegares. Pena saba tombo le bikal hale vilu cha woda wochi. Tane tise rewo mo mombo non tane ez lewa jachera ndone kundo member chando do was ni.
Su me trapa saba. Another example. When monks who come from remote regions would come to Sera and are only used to the customs and the way of thinking of their region, they would constantly get triggered by all of these people with different ideas, with different life experiences, with different opinions. But as they stay longer and longer at the monastery and come to know all of these different people from all of these different places, right? That fear and so forth start to dissipate as they have this vaster vision. Yeah. So that would be an easy way to do it, just by kind of appreciating what is, but from a vaster lens. For anger specifically, but really for any affliction too, what you want to think about is the disadvantages of anger. How has anger affected me in the past? How is it affecting me now? What problems could it lead to in the future? That's very useful. How does it kind of, if we talk about how it diminishes our roots of virtue, that might be, difficult to appreciate without looking at the text. But how does it affect our relationships with others and so forth? Very clear to see.
madu say na gawa as a pet magawa chano do us.
And to talk about the disadvantages of anger in sort of an immediate sense, Geshe said you don't need to know the Buddhist philosophical texts scrutinizingly or anything, because you know that when you're angry, nobody wants to be around you. Like even your pets sometimes go a little further away, right?
That we kept us at least a year.
So you even just from that, like from how others are reacting to us, you don't need to look for disadvantages beyond that. Yeah.
That it's almost in the language of like yours. Then I shall you might tell a zoon, the water, tapagate is it. There's support per Carina, Yapogona, Carina, Yapogona, so control corner to us.
And we can also think about it from, like, if we use like a positive lens for it, to think about the more that we diminish our anger, this establishes our ability to have a good rebirth in future lifetimes, to have a good health, a stable body, attractive appearance. All of these come from being patient and diminishing our anger. Disadvantages of anger, benefits of patience, contemplating that, another really good way to reduce the anger. So fear is a much broader category. So there's many different things one could cultivate. One suggestion that Geshe would make here is purify negative karma and cultivate the four opponent powers. If you cultivate the four opponent powers and purify, you'll be encountering fewer circumstances that arise to fear. So that's one good antidote.
This one, or that they call it Yashuchi there was that Tumbanido at the show you said she Magibad.
And of course, so that's a good method, but of course, more profound and even beyond that, emptiness and bodhicitta, if you can cultivate those, needless to say, you'll have less experience of fear, less experience of anger, less experience of most of the afflictions, actually.
This one, that that pen and zombie me with Toya Kunjipa Chimbo Kazin to Jipa Chimbo. They just held Kaze train it tetona, so Jipa Kanga saw that it in the Chuchan.
One thing that Geshe has found particularly helpful himself is to think about the situations in the world where beings are in fear for their lives, where beings are in fear really in intense ways. If we look at all of the wars and these places in the world and the terrible fear, when he thinks about that, that really gives him a lot of perspective that his situation, by comparison, is not so serious. That can help reduce fear. Those people are no different from us. They are human beings just like us. They are every bit as worthy. They wake up every day thinking that the food is going to run out, thinking that there's not going to be enough water, thinking that because of the war, they could die or their children could die the very next day. That's the type of fear they live in. So that can help put our fear in perspective.
So Geshe
said, of course, it depends on what we're experiencing in that moment. But having a sense of perspective, especially when we're dealing with fear from comparatively smaller situations, this can be very helpful as well. And fear can be useful in some circumstances, like the texts say, fear about the results of the negative karma that we've accumulated or have been accumulating. That can be helpful, right? We can see the results of our negative karma now, the difficult things that we encounter, right? And we know that if we continue in negativity, we create the causes to meet similar circumstances in the future. So that can be helpful in some ways. Or if the fear causes you to remember the objects of refuge and to go for refuge from the bottom of your heart, this can be useful as well, right? Yeah, so that's what Geshe wants to say on that. I think we've covered everybody, and we're 12:30, so thank you, everybody. And we will be here next week. And yes, I saw nganso Tsongkhapa gi kawangarang nang la gogire do stuff which last one which I got. I saw someone, I think it was Carol, she said, wouldn't it be nice to have the pillar of Lama Tsongkhapa? So I was saying, if anybody knows where that pillar is, let me know. I'd like to visit it. Take care, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.